Hey, how's it going?
Good. So we have everyone on the committee, I think, because Vanessa is not joining us, if I remember right, but we don't have Megan yet. And
Okay, yeah, we can wait for her to come in because I know I wanted to start off. Hopefully, she'll join quickly, but it's right on the hour. I'm going to have her go over some of the options. Were you guys able to take a look at the numbers Megan had sent over earlier?
Yes.
well, first of all, thanks, Joanne, but we do have Vanessa, so that's awesome. We are
Oh, we
now
do.
missing
Nice.
only Megan Brennan. So hopefully we get her soon.
I apologize. I'm going to be in the car for the first like 5 minutes, so I apologize if there's some sound in the background for a little bit. I'll try to keep muted in between talking, but so we have the whole crew. Did everybody get a chance to look over the numbers or have a question why we're looking at some new scenarios before Megan hops on?
No.
I'm just looking at them now.
Okay, so just a quick background is just, I had a meeting with Melanie and some of the directors at the library who have programs that run out of that kitchen we were looking to share, Alderbird Room, I believe, right? And it looked at first that it was going to be feasible, and then once we had this meeting, it was very clearly not. They run way too many programs out of that kitchen, and when we talked to the Department of Health, they said no as well because they're not just cooking in there, but they're also heating like non-food items up for like crafts and things like that. So it was like a big no-no. So we had to look at some additional options, which changed kind of what the needs were going to be for the cafe space in terms of the build out, which included an area to be able to cook within the cafe, which originally we were not needing.
So let me jump in real quick to say that I just got a text from Megan, who is struggling with WebEx. So I'm going to minimize this and see about texting her the phone number to call in. And the other thing is, just so everybody knows, we are not streaming because of a technical problem, but we are recording. So we'll put it on our YouTube channel tomorrow. So I'm going to mute for a second so that I can, well, let me just answer her text. We would be happy if you shared your screen and we saw your face, but if calling in is the only way to do it, we have very limited time tonight because one member has to leave at 7:30. So maybe we should just go with the call, question mark. So you all heard that. I'm a big user of talk to text.
Well, I mean, we don't have to rush too much. Since Vanessa was able to join, we'll have a majority. I was worried when it was more going to just be Tony, Joanna, myself, that we wouldn't quite get to a resolution in time. And I was really trying to avoid another call because I know nobody wants to do that for the next meeting. So I guess in her absence, I'll just quickly go over what I understand from the numbers that were provided and just the caveats to it. And then when Megan hops on, she can give maybe a little more detail. So I guess during this first round of estimates, these are all like eyeball figures with general numbers. And then the thought is due to the high cost of things, we're going to have Megan go get quotes from multiple places to try to find the best price. So anticipating numbers to be maybe lower than what's expected here. Plus, I think she built in anywhere from a 5 to 15% buffer, depending on what the cost is. Oh, looks like she might have joined. Sorry.
Yeah, she's in. Yep.
Hey, Megan, are you here?
I'm sorry, I can't log into the or via computer, but I'm on my phone.
Well, thanks,
Yeah, that's
Megan.
no problem. Yeah, I think I was able to forward the numbers you provided to everybody so they can pull them up individually on their end. I was just going to have you do kind of a quick run through of the different pricing options and where some of the numbers came from. We don't have to do the original amount that was already approved. That was already, stuff we were kind of filled in on. But if you want to maybe go over like what is changing from what we had originally proposed to what is now being proposed, like we're not putting in the new door, right? And there might be some other things that were pulled out, but can you explain those two options?
Sure. I think the door was probably one of the biggest things that was removed from our scope of work because we're not sharing the existing kitchen space. So there's no new door opening and door, and we're not changing the hardware on the existing door between that kitchen and the Helderberg meeting room. So that's probably one of the biggest changes. But originally the scope of work was to move the service counter forward so that there's a little more space behind the counter for the tenant to do their food prep and food service. And also, in moving that forward, we had a little bit of finished floor repair because there's going to be holes in the floor, minor holes, but still just, you don't want a trip hazard for the tenant. So we'll have that repaired and then the counter and that knee wall re-anchored. So that's that scope of work. Also, we had priced out additional cabinets, wall cabinets for the back wall of the service area, some swinging gates to keep patrons from coming behind the counter if they are entering from the exterior door at the plaza, and then also a patron sitting counter along the window wall so that folks can order and then sit down on the counter rather than a table if they want that flexibility. And then let me see if if there was anything else in the original scope that I'm not remembering.
I think there were some outlets
and then
needed like more powerful.
Yep, so
outlets.
there's electrical. Yep, so I just pulled that up. And then there was electrical, adding two 220 volt outlets, which required them, just not new outlets like a simple outlet installation, but rather running new 220 circuits from the electric room at the far end of the building by the loading dock over to this area. So it was a little more pricey than just a simple outlet installation. And we also had left an additional line item for, and it was miscellaneous shelving and cabinetry. So now we've got that finalized. So that number actually sort of went down, which is great. So we had a little over $9,000 for the door frame, hardware, painting, wall finish, and things like that for that doorway. And then we had about $14,700 for the millwork, and then another $6,000 for electrical, which put us to that $30,000 value. Now we've got our millwork number refined to $44,950. So moving the counter is $2,450. And then what we have between those two potential options for the other expenditures is what level of food service the library wants to provide. Is it option one, which is full service, having a cooktop and exhaust hood, and then all sort of the system and building improvements that go along with it, which are briefly summarize what we would anticipate needing, which is the exhaust hood in the space over the cooking surface, and then it connected to a rooftop exhaust fan. And then also, if that space has an exhaust fan running in it, we would need to provide a new makeup air unit as part of the overall heating and cooling system for that space, because the exhaust fan is going to be drawing air out continuously. So we need to be putting new air in, and at the extreme seasons where you have extreme cold and extreme heat, you don't want to be constantly drawing in 90-degree temperatures and then tempering them down and such. If we can do some crossing and tempering the air before it gets to the system and such. So that was the other component of the mechanical. And then for plumbing improvements, Typically, if you're doing full food service, you need a grease trap at your floor sanitary piping. You'll need a second sink for hand washing or hand washing station. And then we anticipate that we might need to add a sprinkler head or potentially relocate 2 sprinkler heads to get the appropriate coverage in the cooking area. And then we were anticipating additional electrical improvements beyond those 220 volt outlets for the coffee makers. So a new sub panel and transformer, and then one to serve all the cooking equipment because that has a high demand as well. So that's the full all-in food service option, which was listed as option 1. And then option 2 is a little bit more straightforward and has less mechanical and plumbing expectations, and that would be to do like a ventless oven or something similar to how they cook food at Panera, which was our engineer's example to me. So that would not need, or those types of systems do not need an exhaust fan or exhaust hood. So you don't have that level of improvement, and then therefore you don't need the makeup air unit as well. Ideally, that also simplifies your plumbing expectations, so that you should not need a grease trap at the sanitary line, and you wouldn't need to do any sprinkler improvements, but you would most likely still need a second sink for hand washing. And we do still anticipate needing more electrical work or in the sub panel for that ventless oven or whatever units they decide they want to run for their ventless or their exhaustless system, food service system. So the variation in cost for option 2 just pushes us from $30,000 to $37,400. So we went slightly more over the original budget, adding the plumbing and electrical expectations. And then we, for option 1, the mechanical work and additional plumbing work certainly pushed us well over that $30,000 budget.
So I was looking, oh, go ahead.
No, go ahead, that's fine.
I was going to say, I think I'm looking at estimates from earlier today, but option 1 totaled 133,000 and option 2 totaled 73,000. But I gather that option 2 went down a little bit with some work today.
I revised option 2 to make it more comparable. The engineers had a suggested value of what that ventless oven cost. It's about $24,000 or so, or roughly they had that as a placeholder, but we don't have a placeholder for the like a cooktop because there's so much variation in quality and size that we didn't have a number for that. So I backed out the ventless oven number so that these 2 scopes of work are equal and comparable. They're not the same values, but you can compare them side by side.
And I guess one question is, if we're buying this stuff, it's ours, correct?
Correct.
Yeah, so. Yep.
Okay, so we're
double checking on that. So you said you took out of option 2 the ventless. Say it again.
The ventless oven.
But we would still need that for option 2.
You would still need that. So in both of these scenarios, you would need to buy, or you would need to tell the tenant that they need to provide their own actual cooking equipment, the oven or the flat top grill or whatever it is that you've decided upon.
Got it.
Yeah, so we wanted to look like apples to apples because the other first scenario didn't involve equipment. It was just the straight what would be needed for the construction. So I think that's going to be a separate amount we have to approve. Although I am trying to reach out because I'm unfamiliar with equipment, cooking equipment needs and what someone would need. So I'm going to reach out to a few folks to see what kind of equipment would be needed by a vendor in that space to make X items. So we're hoping for maybe a much lower cost there, but we can do a separate approval for that. I just wanted to have that pulled out of this since this is more of the construction versus like equipment, and then deciding, if the vendor has like their preferred equipment they want to use, then that's on them to provide. Or if the library has a base level that they're willing to have as their personal, like, permanent asset that the vendor does not, obviously get to take with them when they leave. So that was the
So yeah,
thought.
we're sort of talking about the infrastructure components versus
Right.
equipment.
Right. So basically, we had approved before 30,000, all inclusive, and this would bring that up to, it looks like the total's 43. Did we have the soft costs built into the original quote that we had approved? Because that's a newer line item that I didn't remember.
We didn't, and we don't really I put it in there just as a placeholder simply because typically all the work I've been doing for the library for the past year has just been hourly. Our base contracted services wrapped up when the construction project ended, and we, sort of did all the final paperwork, but then we added, replacing the cooling, the evaporative cooler and such. So I can keep just working hourly, or if we wanted to put a fee on it, it's more pertinent to option 1 because I do need to put together a full SED. I'm sorry, I shouldn't say a full. I need to do a submission to SED to get approval to do the rooftop exhaust system and the makeup air and reconfigure sprinkler heads and such. So that's not just my time, but also the plumbing, electrical, mechanical engineers. So there will be a higher cost associated to that. For the option 2, which doesn't need a SED review, I would anticipate that I could still keep working hourly and it wouldn't probably cost about the same amount, but I just wanted to sort of have it as a placeholder if you decided to take option 1.
Gotcha. So Tim, would her hourly be included on this quote per se in terms of getting board approval, or is there like a separate thing for that? Like if we pulled this 5,600 out of option 2?
So typically we haven't worried about board approval for any of Megan's services. I mean, it was approved in general for the whole project at the beginning, and then the committee that no longer exists called the Design Steering Committee, sort of, I guess you could say, inherently blessed continuing to use Megan's services on an hourly basis for what Megan may want to correct me here, but what you might call the cleanup related to, like, for example, we have an electrical job that we're still doing that's essentially unrelated to the cafe and costs about $24,000. And, the easiest and most sensible thing to do was to have Megan, provide the architectural services because she was the one familiar with the project. So I would be comfortable, in this public meeting or in a public board meeting saying, switching to some other provider of this at this point in time doesn't make any sense. Anything to add, Megan, or questions about that from any of the board members?
Yeah, I was just recalling too at one point, and I don't know if it's still true at this point, that for lack of a better term, there was sort of like a bucket or like a line item that accounted for that hadn't been fully expended. Is that still the case, or
That is the case,
are we
yes.
adding to that?
We had always sort of anticipated that there would be additional things at the end. So there's an additional architectural design services line item in the budget that we still have not spent down.
Right. So I think it was the prior, as Tim said, design committee's understanding that was still within the approved budget. So.
And I think a factor to add for Joanne, who's, I believe, the newest here, and possibly for others, is that the design committee faced a point earlier where Megan brought up the concern, like, do you want to fully equip a cafe with no vendor, and thus spend money now, meaning back then, and create a cafe space that a potential vendor may or may not like? Or do you want to put this little counter in and kind of try to make it look a little more like a cafe at this point, which was what you might call a baby step? Like, it was, I believe, $9,000 worth of millwork to create that counter. And the board chose to be conservative at that point and not go buy a bunch of restaurant equipment, not knowing, not even having a vendor for one thing, and also not knowing what the prospective vendor would want. So that's why we find ourselves in this position. We kind of, with all due respect to the previous groups, kicked the can down the road and said, once we have a vendor, we can decide, perhaps in conjunction with that vendor, or just on our own, what the place is going to look like. So it's not like it, to my mind, is a bunch of new expenses. It's just the time where we have the vendor, and so now it's up to us to provide the facility. Megan, is that fair?
Mostly, although I think early on in the project, the expectation was to not have a full service
Oh, right.
cafe, but really to have, like, a coffee bar, something very straightforward where, in our experience with like the Saratoga Library that has a cafe space that we helped fit up for them, it was, their primary customer is, well, one is staff getting coffee, but the other one is parents after story time coming in for coffee and a prepackaged snack for their kid, sort of, and it's a grab and go sort of thing. So we were trying to keep something simple, straightforward. And then because also we've learned from the experience of Saratoga Library that it's really hard to keep a vendor if there's not a great, if it's not a great source of income. They've gone through numerous tenants over the years, that if for some reason the library decided, we don't want to be a landlord anymore, and this isn't really, working out as great as we hoped it would, you could convert that space back very simply to a program space or a designated meeting room, or have some other function without too much change or money's wasted.
Mm-hmm.
So that was the initial intent way back when.
Mm-hmm. That rings true to my memory as well.
So it's looking like for the second option, that 5,600 could technically fall under a line item that was already approved, right? Because there's
Good, yeah.
that limit. So then technically all we're approving for the second option, which is, I'm being honest, the most likely option, just an additional $7,400, correct?
Mm-hmm.
Above the 30 that a board has already approved, right? So.
Right. And then we have a separate discussion involving the equipment and maybe doing like what we did before, where we approve like an amount that it needs to be under, basically, and we just try to price out the most cost-effective option. Or if we go consult whoever and they say you can get by with this equipment, I'm hoping that number's lower. And then even more so, if the vendor goes, I don't like that brand of equipment, I'm going to bring in my own, then, we're covered for the approval, but we're hoping not to hit that number, basically, is my how I'm looking at that second amount for the equipment. Does anybody have a different take on it? I'm new to this, so please don't take my thoughts as like,
The only thing I'm stuck on is considering the equipment separate. If it's ultimately going to be a cost, then I want to understand sort of the all-in costs. I do agree with you. I mean, just for efficiency purposes and to get this moving, I don't have an appetite for the option one. I think it puts us in a realm of outside of the scope of what we planned to do and thought we were going to be even considering with this particular vendor wanting to heat stuff up. it should be able to be accommodated in something closer to option 2. But I do want to understand where the line is, if it's actually the 37,000 or if it's 37,000 plus the cost of that ventless oven, right? So like I get that the decisions might need to happen separately, but to me they're part of the same decision and understanding the cost of standing up a cafe. Like, do we know if this vendor will consider providing their own equipment? Because to be blunt, if they're not, right, then we're either looking at the full amount of the infrastructure and the ventless oven, or not doing any additional sort of improvements. Because a lot of these, I think, are to respond to a request of this particular vendor. Does that make sense? So like either they want in, and that's not what I mean. I know they want in, but either we're buying the oven or they're buying the oven. And if we're buying the oven, I want to, when we make a decision, understand the full cost. And it seems.
Well, so I guess I had the same question for Megan. In the 26,000 that you had originally had in option 2, what equipment was that covering? Can you maybe elaborate on like what the thought was? Like
Well,
what?
that was the ventless oven and like an egg cooker, which is what I had I think I'd also provided that originally in that first summary that I'd emailed out when they first gave me that information a few weeks back.
What's
guess-
So it wasn't specific model or brand, but it was
Right.
an average cost for a ventless oven.
Yeah, another way we can
24,000 and then 2,500 for the egg cooker.
Yeah. Oh, that might be similar to an egg cooker I found, because I was trying to look at options online and I found one that was like 2,200 that cooked like 12 eggs at the same time. So that might be similar. But yeah, I don't know if I would have to ask Melanie if she would specifically need something like as big as like a ventless oven, or if there's something in between that could work. That's maybe not as expensive. But another thing we can do is we can say we're approving up to this much to help, with the equipment costs, but whatever it covers we keep, and then the rest is your obligation. Because last I checked, I thought she was providing the coffee machines and stuff, right, Tim?
I think so, yeah.
You've had more meetings with them than I have, so but I think there is an assumption she's bringing in some of her own equipment. It's just what we want to decide, like what would we have there that would be like a permanent fixture that we would just keep, and what would we expect the the vendor to bring in themselves, because like a larger expense like an oven, that's a little harder to move in and out, right? So maybe that's this thing we look at as our permanent equipment, and then they can get something like an egg cooker and all these like smaller odds and ends like that. So I would say like maybe the oven, and that's it. So if they need a microwave, coffee machine, egg cooker, that's for them to figure out. But pretty much any vendor that would be in there might need like this one thing that's like a larger.
I think I conceptually I can agree with that. Yeah, I would say no to the egg cooker. It's just that like we don't, for the library to invest in and own it. I mean, it would need to be something that we'd be fairly sure other vendors could use. Otherwise, we own something that's useless to a library, quite honestly.
Right, because we can end up with like a
You would
ROM.
want to set a precedent. Sorry.
No, go ahead.
So you don't want to set a precedent, in 3 years, if you got a new tenant that they got all new, oven equipment, you
I can't do
afford to
anything but
spend
laugh at
another
that because we would not have
$20,000.
the money for that. That's
Right.
cute. I agree, Megan.
So my thinking is, I think the costs that are proposed in option 2 are fair if we're looking at.
And before you leave, do you want to sort of stay like what you're thinking? You want to offer that to us before you hop off, or?
I mean, I definitely agree. I think the egg cooker would be a nice thing to have, but if you can't guarantee, you can always guarantee someone's going to use an oven. You can't guarantee they're going to use the egg cooker, so I don't see investing in that. But I do think option 2 is definitely better than option 1.
So I guess, do we have a lot more questions? Could we throw it to a vote now, or is there a lot more to discuss and we'll just hash the rest of it out with Vanessa, Tony, and myself? Because basically my thought process is, you know, we put forward the recommendation for the 37,000. So it's basically an approval of 7,000 more or 7,500 more or whatever it was, which I think is an easier pill to swallow, based on the new information of not being able to share the kitchen. And then a separate equipment expense of, I don't know, if we cut the difference and just say 20,000, right? So we would have to find this oven for
I
20,000.
guess I don't understand the separating it out. If we're just gonna have the oven be a part of the cafe, like, I don't know, it seems like hiding the ball a little bit. Like, let's just say what the cost of outfitting this cafe is and equipping it to this minimal level, and that's it. Like, this is the price of it, like, take it or leave it, because or
Mhm.
are we saying that people might want it without the oven, and then it's like, I guess I don't know. I don't
Yeah,
understand the separating it
I
out.
don't see why keeping it out, because if you're gonna end up probably asking for the approval for that anyway, you might as well do it all at once.
Okay, so then we would be looking at 57.5
And
also.
then we're done and no other investments, right? Everything else would be up to the
Yeah. So if they want something smaller like an egg cooker or whatever, because I mean, granted, Melanie probably I've informed her of, I mean, she knew coming out of the meeting we had with the directors that we would this sharing a kitchen option was no longer a thing. So she's already aware of that. But she'll just have to like pivot on her menu items. So it might be a little truncated from what she was originally thinking. But they also do have a new location that's closer, that's in Albany. So they might be able to offset that with some additional pre-prep work there. Um, so, you know, I think the 57.5 sounds reasonable. So 20,000 of that is an allowance for us to find that that oven that would remain on the library property, because I think any vendor would make use of that one way or another. Um, and then we just cross our fingers we find something cheaper, so there's more cost savings. But that's kind of where I'm at. The 37.5 for construction, and then the 20,000 allowance for equipment.
I just want to be clear about for me, the $20,000 is for an oven or nothing. Like, I just, the vagueness of a equipment allowance to me, um, I'm not into. Like, the only thing that I think I can justify or I would be in favor of would be purchase of an oven up to, you know, like you said, it's an up to an up to amount. So if we got it for less, great. But I don't want to make it an equipment allowance because I don't want it to be leveraged for things that I don't think would be useful to the library.
That's fine. I think I misspoke. I'm in agreement with you. We're on the same page. It would just be an oven.
My question there is, and maybe I missed this somehow, but before the meeting, the word being used a lot was cooktop, and now it's oven. Did I miss the conversion of one to the
Well,
other?
Cooktop needs a
Cooktop
hood, right?
requires an exhaust fan.
Oh, got
The
it, got it.
cooktop
I
needs a
remember
full
that
exhaust
part.
system.
Yeah, I remember
If
that
you
part.
go to like a ventless oven, you don't need to exhaust it.
Got it. Makes sense. Thanks. You guys had said that. I just, I haven't built a cafe before either. Like, I think none of us have except Megan. So anyway.
Okay.
I hate to rush you, but I do have to go. So I didn't know if you want to do the vote or.
Did anybody have any additional input or questions on what we want to recommend to the board? I mean, granted, we're just a voting on like what we're recommending. Ultimately, the board will probably come back with some things, and maybe I'll have to do more due diligence before the meeting to be able to speak to things. So in terms of the committee weighing in, does anybody have any additional stuff, or can we throw it to a vote on what we're going to recommend?
Yeah, I'm fine with it. Honestly, I'm kind of indifferent because 57.5, 60,000 doesn't matter. The egg cooker is like a pittance of what we're doing. So I honestly really don't care that much, honestly.
Tony says yes to the cooker.
Yeah.
Throw
Yeah,
it
it's just,
in
It just it keeps going up and up and up, and
Do
I
the
don't
vote
know.
though, so Joanne can leave because I
Yeah.
pulled her into a conversation that's kept her longer than she could stay.
Yeah, so let's throw it out. So we're voting to recommend to the board 37,000 and a half for construction costs, and up to $20,000 for a ventless oven. Vanessa,
Yes.
Joanne,
Yes.
Tony,
Yeah.
me, yes. Okay, cool.
Sorry, Joanne. Bye.
It's all right.
Thanks,
Yeah.
Bye,
Joanne.
everyone.
See ya. And then did we cover everything we need to for building and grounds, Tim? I know I was out for a little bit, but I think we got everything squared away for the HR office and everything else, right? Was there anything additional that I might have
Yeah,
missed out?
no, nothing additional. I will just tell the members of the committee that the foundation, and Megan, you'll find this interesting too. The foundation has asked us to price out a sprinkler system for the front of the building for all the green spaces in order to, more efficiently water the plantings and so forth. And while we do think that'll be a major expense, the foundation is looking for major expenses to fund. So Megan threw out and knows this so far, threw out a ballpark figure of 50,000 that they would, need to be looking at for. There's a lot of long pipes that would be part of this. And
It's definitely more than 50. I'm sorry to interrupt
Okay.
you. You said, would it be
That's okay.
5 or 50? And I said, definitely more than 50.
Oh, okay. Well, and
I-
here's the scoop, and let me just ask you this question, Megan. Like the foundation, once we shared the figure of 50 with them, they said, "Well, go ahead and get estimates." So, but then it occurred to me and to Lou Warner that I'm guessing installing something like that would be construction grantable for a future year. Do you have a gut feeling on that?
I think that's probably a hard no because they don't do anything related to landscaping typically.
Oh, never. Okay, so got it. So it's probably unlikely to happen, but you guys are on the Buildings and Grounds Committee, and I thought I'd just let you know that the foundation is interested in that. Alternatively, where the suggestion came from is that our grounds are suddenly much larger than our existing staff has the person power to landscape, and we've never had the expertise. So we were suggesting that they hire a firm to come in and do plantings and maintenance on an annual basis. The problem with that suggestion is currently the market is kind of like people are not even estimating things because of their labor shortage. Lou makes the calls and nobody calls back. So at any rate,
We're still waiting for some of our landscaping work to be completed still.
Yeah, yep. And thankfully it was 70 today, but not so much tomorrow. I think more like 50. But anyway, so landscaping is something we will grapple with at some point and see if we can improve it. But it's looking pretty good now. It's just that we could use some flowers and some trees. So anyway, just a thought for another day.
Very cool.
One thing that I wanted to just add was I got an opportunity to see the acoustic tile. It was my first time seeing it, and it turned out really nice. So I'm not exactly sure when it was finished. I hadn't had a lot of reason to go into that room until early voting. And so I saw it, and I just wanted to tell the team that I thought it looked great.
I think so too. Thank you, Vanessa. And I think I'm saying that personally to Megan, she was kind of the big cheese on that one. So the shows that we've mounted look really good against it. And tomorrow is the actual election. So after that, the room becomes completely ours again. So anyway, thanks, Vanessa.
Yeah, no problem.
Cool. Do we have anything else we need to discuss, or I guess I'm going to reach out.
Ask one more question, Alicia, before you close out. Just related to the cafe and the the patio area. Do we have an update on those pieces that we purchased for out there, like the canopy and the fixed seating? How's that all coming?
So the fixed seating is in our possession and the canopy's in our possession. Megan keeps pushing the installer to get over there and install the canopy, which is a little bit harder than you might think. It apparently involves demolishing a little bit of concrete and then repouring. And I'm starting to wonder, and I'm sorry if I'm putting you on the spot, Megan, but I'm starting to wonder if that's going to be accomplishable once the weather turns cold, or whether it's going to have to be done in the spring, you know?
I'm worried about it too. I've been thinking about it. This week, the weather looks great, and that sort of half answer we got sounded like maybe the guy might be out this week. If he can get it done this week, the weather's favorable for it. If not, if you guys don't take exception, I'd rather them wait till the summer, because we don't want concrete to cure incorrectly with the cold temperatures overnight. And you don't want to pay an additional cost for heat blankets and such. So maybe it makes sense to be their first install next spring if he'll sign in blood. Now, technically, the guy who sold us this lives in Guilderland. So you could leverage something in the neighborhoods. I don't know.
What does that do with closing out this project if it had to wait until summer? Like,
it
how does
should
that
affect you? We already know the exact cost. I think you probably paid for the materials, Tim, but not the installation. I'm not sure, because I don't see your invoicing. We know the exact installation cost because it was part of the purchase order. They can't change that amount. So as long as that money has already been deducted out of the remaining fund balance that we have, which I'm sure it has been because we've been talking about it for a while, you could still close out the bond, close out the project. It would just be that installation payment would be sitting in the library's account until the work was done, and then the check was cut.
Got it.
It's unfortunate, but it's, I think, related to this whole, difficulty of hiring
Labor
people.
shortage.
Yeah. So, I mean, the stuff is
Really?
on site, it's all wrapped up in plastic. I think we'd probably better, if we go that route, I'm thinking that at least the canopy portion needs to be moved inside before it gets snowed on, even though it's, pretty watertight plastic, but oh well, it's, I think it's, I don't want to,
I'm sorry.
yeah, and I don't want to punt, but it's like, not too many people know how to install that thing. And if, and I can say in good faith that Megan, routinely, like every 6 or 8 days, says, "Hey, where are you?" It's, I saw one email from the landscaper, and they were just like, "We're so disgusted with our own performance, but we can't get anyone to work, and so our jobs are all backed up." It's very frustrating, but I think the answer to Vanessa's question is you do the accounting now and get the labor done later, so hopefully the world returns to normal.
The longer this takes, the less optimistic I feel. But it has to get better, right?
Yeah. Yep. I think generally things are getting better, but I don't know.
I do too.
Honestly, I don't know. I'm not going to speculate, but I think the spring hopefully will look better than the fall.
Let's hope.
Any other question? I guess that's it for Elish to ask, but
No, I don't have anything else. I mean, I'm happy we got through what we needed to get through without an additional meeting. I was really dreading that. So thanks everyone for getting through everything pretty quickly. And then I guess an action item for myself in the meantime is to reach out to Melanie with what we're proposing and seeing, and just sort of informing her that, okay, now's your time to pick up whatever equipment you're going to need, because we're doing just the oven. So just setting that expectation.
And then just so Vanessa and Tony know, the contract has been signed by Kathy Barber, but not yet signed by Melanie. And I think that's just a, obviously it needs to be signed, but it's not because she's, trying to exert leverage. It's because she just opened another cafe and she's busy and hasn't been by the library in a while. Just on a positive note, I did go to the opening of their cafe on Quail Street, and it was awesome. There were, 50 or 60 creative locals and politicians around and so forth, and everybody was really happy, and the food was good. So I would go back, although I'm trying to go back at my own location. So yeah, anyway.
Not the best, but yeah, I went to her soft opening too. It was pretty cool. It's a good space.
Mhm.
But yeah. Well, that's all I got. Anybody else? Or we can wrap it up.
Thanks everyone for your time.
Thank you. Under an hour, we did it.
Bye,
My
everybody.
favorite kind of meeting.
Exactly. Let's do it again.
Thank you, Megan. We don't see you, or we
Yeah.
didn't see you tonight, but we did hear you.
I'm
But we don't-
sorry, I don't know why the
That's
WebEx
okay.
wouldn't load, but
Mhm.
You're
It is
it's
what
good to
it
hear
is.
everyone's voice.
Yeah, same to you. Yep.
Bye, everyone.
Okay,
Bye,
Take
Let me know
care.
if you need anything in the meantime. Thanks, guys.
will do. Thanks. Bye-bye.